Imagine walking into a business you own, only to be judged like you don't belong there. That's exactly what happened to a successful Black CEO when she visited one of her own bank branches. Dressed casually after a busy morning, she was ready to handle some routine business. But instead of being greeted with respect, a manager made it painfully clear he assumed she was just another customer, and not the person who ran the entire operation. What followed was a moment of pure resilience and grace as she decided to turn this ugly encounter into an unforgettable lesson. With years of leadership under her belt, she wasn't about to let ignorance slide. Stay tuned as we unravel this powerful story of self-worth, bold action, and how one woman taught a lesson that will resonate far beyond that bank's walls. You won't want to miss what happened next. As the manager stood there, arms crossed and a skeptical look on his face, the CEO couldn't help but feel a pang of disbelief. How many times had she faced moments like this? Too many to count. But this one felt different, more personal. She had poured her heart and soul into building this bank, creating opportunities not just for herself, but for her community. And now, standing in a space she had worked so hard to create, she was being treated like an outsider. The manager's tone was dismissive as he questioned her reason for being there. Instead of losing her composure, she stayed calm, watching as his assumptions fueled his arrogance. He didn't ask for her name or credentials, and it was clear he had already made up his mind about who she was. Little did he know, the person he was talking down to held the keys to everything he thought he controlled. The CEO decided to observe how far this situation would go. She calmly explained she was there to check on some accounts and asked for assistance. But the manager's dismissive attitude only deepened. He glanced at her with a condescending smile and said, "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is a business bank." The words stung, but she didn't flinch. Years of experience had taught her that moments like this required strategy, not emotion. As she stood there, the staff behind the counter exchanged uneasy glances. Some seemed uncomfortable, recognizing her from corporate visits, but no one spoke up. It was a silent reminder of how assumptions and bias can create tension even in spaces designed to foster opportunity. The manager continued talking, offering excuses instead of solutions, unaware he was walking into a storm. Quietly, the CEO prepared for her next move, knowing she'd soon flip the script entirely. The manager's impatience was beginning to show. He tapped his pen on the desk and glanced at his watch, as if she were wasting his time. The CEO, still composed, asked calmly, "Is this how you treat all your customers?" He chuckled, dismissing her question with a wave of his hand. "I think I know how to handle my job," he said. The arrogance in his voice was unmistakable, but she let it hang in the air, silently noting every word. As he continued to talk down to her, she noticed employees shifting nervously. Some looked like they wanted to intervene but weren't sure how. A young teller in the corner glanced at her, wide-eyed, clearly recognizing who she was. The tension in the room was palpable, and the CEO knew the moment to reveal her true identity was close. But before she could speak, the manager decided to escalate further. "Listen," he said sharply, leaning forward, "if you don't have proper business here, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." His words echoed through the room, turning heads and deepening the silence. The CEO held her ground, her expression calm but resolute, knowing the next move would change everything. The room went silent as the manager's words hung in the air. The CEO took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the moment. She had dealt with situations like this before, but the blatant disrespect in her own bank added a new layer of irony. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, a second voice broke the silence, a voice from behind her. "Excuse me," the young teller said, stepping forward hesitantly. Her voice trembled slightly, but she stood her ground. "I think you might want to double-check who you're speaking to." All eyes turned to the teller, who was clearly nervous but resolute. The manager shot her a sharp look, his frustration now directed at her. "I don't need your input," he snapped, but the teller wasn't backing down. "I'm serious," she said, her voice gaining strength. You should check the company directory. She's not just a customer." The manager froze, his confidence cracking for the first time. He glanced back at the CEO, suddenly unsure. The tension in the room was electric as he fumbled with his computer, typing hurriedly. Meanwhile, the CEO remained calm, watching as the pieces of his arrogance began to unravel. The entire staff seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. As the manager stared at his computer screen, his expression shifted from confusion to panic. The CEO's name and photo were displayed in bold letters under the title *President and CEO*. His face went pale as he slowly looked up at her, realizing the gravity of his mistake. The staff, now whispering among themselves, watched intently, unsure of what would happen next. Before he could stammer out an apology, the CEO raised a hand to stop him. "Let me save you the trouble," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I've heard enough to understand how you treat people who walk into this bank, and let me tell you, this is not the culture I've worked so hard to build." The manager opened his mouth to respond, but she didn't give him the chance. Turning to the staff, she addressed them directly. "For those of you who stay silent when things like this happen, let this be a lesson. Speaking up isn't easy, but it's necessary. I commend those who do." As she walked toward the door, she paused and looked back at the stunned manager. "You'll be hearing from HR very soon." With that, she left the branch, but not before the young teller caught her attention. "Thank you," the teller whispered. The CEO gave her a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. What the manager didn't realize was that this visit was part of a larger plan, a surprise audit of the bank's customer service practices. And now, thanks to his actions, the CEO had all the evidence she needed to implement real change. After leaving the branch, the CEO reflected on what had just happened. Moments like these were a painful reminder of the work still left to do, but they also reaffirmed her mission. She didn't build this bank just for profit. It was a place meant to uplift, to create opportunity, and to challenge the kind of bias she had just experienced. True to her word, the manager received a call from HR the next day, and policies were swiftly put in place to ensure such behavior wouldn't be tolerated again. The young teller's courage didn't go unnoticed either. A week later, she received a personal email from the CEO, thanking her for speaking up and inviting her to participate in a company-wide diversity initiative. The CEO knew there would always be challenges, but this incident was a reminder of why she fought so hard to lead. Change starts with one moment, one action, and one lesson no one will ever forget.